Hello, everyone. My name is Neil Patel, and today we're going to be talking about how you can reclaim your organic traffic. We're going to be pretty much decoding AI overviews, which is pretty much everywhere. I know in some European countries and some places around the world, they have to deal with privacy laws and GDPR and some other stuff, so it's not necessarily showing up, but it's slowly rolling out to most countries, if not already there. I'm Neil Patel. I'm the co-founder of NP Digital. Today we have Maria with us, who is a leader of data-driven SEO strategy for the French market, and Charlie, who's a senior SEO manager who's based out of London. Maria and Charlie, do you want to do a quick introduction?
Yeah, sure. Thank you everyone for coming today. And yes, I am Maria, and I lead the SEO and geo strategies for the French market, as well as other EMEA clients as Adobe and Clarence, where we've already tested a lot of different strategies for being in AI overviews. So I'm excited to share some of these strategies with you today.
Thanks, Maria. Hey, everyone. I'm Charlie. I'm a senior SEO manager at MP here in the UK. Spent the last 18 months looking at how we can adapt and implement new strategies to adapt to the AI overview and the LLM landscape, most notably across Stripe, a large payment provider, and across 13 territories. So excited to be here, excited to talk through some of the key things that we've been looking at over that last 18 months, 2 years.
Cool. And sorry for the background noise if you can hear it. I think the unit next to me is doing some construction, but hopefully it doesn't come through. So at NP Digital, we're a global company, 28 countries, tons of awards, a lot of people, a lot of amazing brands, like they mentioned, Adobe, Clarence, Stripe, the list goes on and on. And we want to bring to you what's working and what we've been testing for both large enterprises and SMBs. And you'll hear more about that today. If you also want to book a strategy call with our team and you just want us to help do your marketing for you, you can just take out your phone, scan that QR code, and it'll take you over to NP Digital where you can fill out your information. Or if you just want to go directly to the site as well, you can just go to npdigital.com and also put in your information.
So looking at how AI is refining search behavior, we know it's something that's happened across the globe, across lots of different markets, but what is it that's changing about search behavior, and how are people looking to find answers to their queries and make a purchase in the new landscape that is AI and LLMs? Well, many of you will have seen AI reviews, use them in your day-to-day, in your week, to understand a particular answer to a question or query that you have. Typically, that will be more of an informationally based question, so less transactional, commercial. But what we know is that when those AI overviews or summaries are appearing in the search results, people's behavior is drastically changing. You're taking that information, you might immediately bounce off, and that's your journey over. And so when we see an AI summary appearing, only 8% of the people that have searched that query actually click into a more traditional result. And then when there isn't one, it's 15%. And that's pretty stark when you look at the right-hand side in the graph. You've got the total searches, which is around 10,000. Around a third of that is AI overviews being displayed for those searches, and then actually just over 1%. So it really is a big and impactful change within the landscape. So we need to be really on top of what it is that we're doing to adapt to that, and also look at the metrics in which we're measuring our success as well. So what exactly is an AI overview? As I said, many of you will be using these in your daily search journey, but essentially what they are is an AI generated answer that synthesizes multiple sources into an easy digestible answer, which again might mean that you take what you need from that and move on. Or it might be, if you're potentially one of the people that is within the 1% that clicks into that, click through into one of the several different citations or links within that. So on the right-hand side, you can see the more carousel-based thing, which is more of a, I guess it will get across your brand better. People will have better recall of who you are. And then on the left-hand side, with all the listing under there, you've got the smaller hyperlinks where that will also move off to a particular link, but might mean that people remember you less. So certainly something to be aware of, consider, and bring into your overall strategy. So how do they differ from traditional snippets? So if we look at, people also ask, they're quite different in that they're not coming from those multiple sources. They're not synthesizing sources or looking at swapping in and out citations, and they don't have the more dynamic summaries. They're more static. They're more easy to, I suppose, digest and see. And also they're more predictable in terms of how often someone's going to click through on that. People also ask. The one major thing being that they're going to come from one source, and therefore they're not necessarily going to come from sort of 10 to 15 different pieces of website content and so on. So that has a bit of a large ripple effect on the search behavior. I've already touched on this to quite a large degree, but as you can see within the pie chart there, around 41% of the people surveyed in here bounce straight off of the answer that they get. So they've taken what they think they need. They might pick up that journey later on in another session. But what it means is that answers are coming before clicks, and therefore fewer sessions are coming into your site. And also it means that we need to think about how is it that we get visibility within that, and what are the various different tactics that will drive that. It won't necessarily be a single page rank. It will be a wide variety of authoritative singles that are going to drive your visibility within those sort of citations and AI overviews. So we talked about the fact that it's coming from multiple different brands or sites, but there are a few consistent things that you need to be doing really well to ensure that you're getting the biggest opportunity to be visible in those AI overviews. One of those things is around consistent topical authority, which Maria is going to delve into in a bit more detail further along. But essentially looking at how have you built Google's understanding of you being an expert in a particular niche. How have you delved into short tail and long-term queries that ladder up to one another, and how they link to each other to drive that overall consistent topical authority. How are you considering refreshing content? Fresh content is particularly important in AI views. We know it's important in LLMs now as well. And also it's historically always been quite an important aspect of the Google algorithm. And making sure that the pages are well structured. We know that it's pulling in short, sharp snippets of information. So we should reflect that in the way in which we're presenting that content. And then also one of the other key things is making sure that we're demonstrating experience signals. So have we got EAT signals on our site? Have we got profiles? Have we got information about the individuals that have created that content? Have we got UGC? Have we got reviews? How do we make sure that we're getting across that we're a trusted source and it should be considered in these platforms? So talked a little bit about the drawbacks in that we know that less people are going to come to our site, but what we also need to consider is that the landscape has completely changed. We now need to relook at and reconsider what it is that we're looking at when it comes to metrics and measuring our success. We know they're not going away. So things that we need to think about as being an upside, first and foremost, is the fact that it's an above fold presence. So if you're in those AI overviews, you've got the core citations within that, then you're getting in there at the early stages of their consideration journey. And then the other key thing within that, which is very highly relevant, is the fact that those citations will ultimately help drive brand lift. So how is it that we think about that going forward? Is it, measuring branded clicks or clicks into home pages and so on, but also looking at whether or not Google Trends might see an uplift, say post 3 months of getting lots of visibility in things like AI overviews. We talked quite a lot about the downside, so I don't want to sort of focus on this too much. One of the key things that I wanted to pick out here is that 75% of general users have found major errors in AI overviews. And I think the important thing there to think about is, well, if we're looking to create high quality content that's pulling from multiple different reliable sources, it might be utilizing proprietary data. Ultimately, we're going to get over the fact that we're not going to be surfacing that type of content as a business and brand in those AI overviews, and potentially build further trust. And then the other thing to also think about is, at the moment, when we're looking at AI overviews, we can't necessarily get into the granularity about, well, how much of our clicks are coming into our page or our site from AI overviews in Google, because we're not necessarily getting that split in Search Console. That may well change, but there's limited kind of knowledge and understanding of how, the immediacy of that is going to translate into clicks onto site. So that all means that we need to think about how we're balancing our visibility versus our traffic. We know that LLMs and AI overviews are consistently bigger proportions of or contributions to overall sales. So that's something that you ultimately need to be aware of. And despite the drawbacks to AI overviews, really look to optimize your site to be visible within those types of queries. It makes the most sense for mid and upper funnel queries that shape that perception and trust. So being there at the early stages of someone's journey. And then what we also need to think about is how do we take what is less traffic and commoditize that into something that's, conversion first. So how do we take the journey from them being in those AI views, potentially clicking less into your site, and then navigating to the more transactional and commercial pages. So it's about balancing those two things together and making more of the less traffic that we're getting. And that leads quite nicely into the fact that there obviously are trade-offs. So something that we need to get familiar with is ultimately the inclusion is important. The citations will be important to drive that brand uplift. But what we do know is that we're not necessarily going to get the same level of clicks, and that's something that we need to think about in terms of reporting back up to more senior stakeholders throughout the business. And then also freshness versus maintenance load. So how is it that we prioritize which content we're refreshing? How important is it to the business? And therefore, where should we put our time and effort into making sure that we're visible in AI overviews? And then finally, also just looking at whether or not we can balance what the sales impact is with that brand's visibility. Those are kind of the key things that are the strategic trade-offs. There's obviously a lot to think about and how you communicate that to your stakeholders, but I think that gives you a good feel for what they are and what that means for people's behavior.
Awesome. And now that we've talked a bit about the different landscape and how AI is changing, now we as content marketeers, we want to know what are the different things that we can do for content to win in this age. And I want to say that it's not always the loudest voice that wins, it's the most credible one. And we will see how. To build up this credibility, we have to think about topical authority. Topical authority is non-negotiable today. We have to be covering topics in a detailed way, because when we do that, we can signal expertise to both LLMs and also to the users that we have. We really need to cover a subject in depth over scattered coverage. And how are we going to do this? We're going to do it with different pillars and clusters. So we have to think about it. Well, now that I'm thinking about content structure, I'm thinking about it as a city. So let's say that, for example, a pillar page is the city center or the city that you are covering. And then the cluster pages are everything that is related to that. So the different neighborhoods and how they are all connected. This is the internal links. So you have to have a content strategy that covers everything from this perspective, which is a pillar page and then different content clusters that will help building up this authority at the end. And this is the content structure in one way. And then we have the behind the scenes part of it, which is a schema markup. So everything related to structured data is really important to help LLMs, and in this case, AI overviews, to understand your content better. So you will be able to showcase to different LLMs the content type that it's covering a page and signal different credibility things like authors or organization view that you can add to your schema markup to make it more easy to read then for different bots. And this is really important, because today we are not only optimizing for rankings, we also optimize for summaries, right? Now LLMs are picking up the content that we have on a page and they're summarizing that content. So we really need to be paying attention to different factors, such as, for example, using clear headers and bullet lists and break content into different sections that are easy to read, and with summaries, for example, that will make it easy for different LLMs to grab and summarize the content that we have on our page. And there is also a really important thing that we have to remember and that we have to keep in mind, and it's freshness of content. As you can see here, we can see how important the updates of the content we have on our sites drive more rankings and traffic. But in general, I think this is common sense for everyone. When we look, for example, for different news, we are always looking for the latest news on a topic, and LLMs function in the same way. We really want to update the content that is the most important to us and that has the most the most important to us from a traffic perspective, but also from a conversion perspective. And as I always tell to my clients, I think that your content asset and your content library has to be a living asset and not only a one-time campaign. Because, as I said, LLMs and users alike will take into account the freshness of the content, but they will also be influenced by all of the content that you write and the headers that you have, so the different headlines. And you have to take this into account when creating your content strategy. So we have to go back to the beginning and say, okay, what are the answers that the users are looking for with this content? And when you have that, you have to put that into the first bit of the content that you are writing. You have to provide that answer in the most natural way and in the easiest part, like the top of the article or the everything that you are writing. And for this, something that also helps a lot is everything related to FAQs and TLDRs, so the summaries at the beginning. And this is an example that I always like to use because I have a client that actually wanted to rank for a specific query. And this query, this long tail query, he wanted to do a different article, like different articles about it, and he covered already in an article a lot of different content related to this. And when we were looking at the SERP, so at the search results, we saw that one of the first answers that was ranking in the second or third position was an FAQ. So sometimes we don't really need to create thousands of content on one specific query. We really need to go and check what are the different things that are going to make our content better for a specific intent. And sometimes it's not a long article, it's just an FAQ that is well written and that is exactly what the user is looking for. But we have to pay attention and also remember that different query types are still different, are different from each other. So as Charlie said right before, we know that informational content, so informational queries are the ones that trigger the most AA overviews. And this is actually a really good opportunity for smaller brands today, because when we look at really big brands, they have, of course, an authority already. They have a lot of content in different topics, but smaller brands can adapt quicker to different changes, and they can check the different visibility gaps and of this big brands and go and create more content and build up that topic of authority that we just said and explained before to be the ones that are going to appear in AI overviews. So this is actually super important to remember, is that all of these questions are being asked today and that they deliver and trigger AI overviews are opportunities as well for smaller brands. And something related to your visibility, because we are talking more about the non-brand visibility with AI overviews and these informational queries, but we also have to take into account that branded searches then are our safety net. These are the different the different searches that are going to still be there and ensure visibility even when non-brand clicks are shrinking. But we have to take care of this branded space of our visibility and take visibility as a whole, not non-brand unbrand, but the whole thing. And how are we going to increase then our brand visibility? We can do it with different strategies, and here we have some examples of PR, webinars, and everything that we can do with social. And this is important because while you are working on your content strategy from a non-brand perspective to go into AI overviews, you can also do this kind of strategies, and then every podcast or LinkedIn post, for example, will plant a seed into the growth of your brand demand later on. And something also really important in this age where we have a lot of content. There's like tons and tons and tons of content that are created every day. And I think that this is actually super key into the content strategy today, is the uniqueness of everything that we write, and in this case the unique data that you can add to a piece of content. So everything related to industry surveys or benchmark, different things that you can put into your article, into your content strategy, to make it a bit different from everything that is online, and that is also less replicable from LLMs, and actually something that then LLMs will be using as source for you. And this is how, and this is why also some of our best cases here at MP Digital, for example, in my case with my client Lobby, are from proprietary studies that we've done, from different analysis and meta-analysis that we could do, and that are actually bringing us a lot of different links from other sites that are interested into the content that we created, because we are actually creating value and having this informational gain that other maybe sites aren't doing. And this is kind of the summary of what we've just discussed in terms of what AI loves to cite. So here we can see the citation share for different content sources. But what it's important to remember is that in any case, LLMs, in different LLMs will always cite sources that are credible, sources that are well structured, sources that have content that is refreshed, that is updated. And actually this graph is kind of funny. We left it here because I think it's important to remember and to see the different share by content sources. So you can see Google AI overviews, but you can also see ChatGPT or Perplexity. And I want you to have a look at ChatGPT Wikipedia's share. So you can see that apparently ChatGPT uses a lot Wikipedia as a source. And this is actually something that changed just a couple of weeks ago. And now ChatGPT doesn't use Wikipedia as much as it did. And this is just to showcase that everything that we are saying here, it's something that changes a lot. This industry is completely shifting all the time. And this is not only something that we do through the webinars, but also through the different workshops that we do with our clients, and that we showcase to them that everything that we do, you have to remember that it's something that will change and that you have to adapt. And that's, I think, key for any content strategy today. And sometimes everything related to content and the content strategy that you want to do, you are thinking about it in form of text, but sometimes the best way to do it is through video. I think that I am not the only one that have already seen in the AI overviews sources a YouTube video, for example, or if you didn't, like, try and test it out, because I think that a lot of different sources now are coming to videos, and that's normal, right? Because sometimes with one query, you just have a better information and a better answer with a video, with a short video, short explanation, or an infographic, more than with text. So this is actually something that you have to take into account also to craft your content strategy. So just to finish this up and to kind of wrap up this part, a content strategy that wins in AI today is kind of a blend between authority and engagement. We have to take into account everything that we've said about summaries, FAQs, having a good structured data, freshness, but we also have to keep into account that we are creating content for humans, and that humans, we value things that are original, that are different, that have a different angle. So if we do these two things, then this is how we can be the top voice in our space.
And that leads nicely into the fact that Maria's kind of called out a whole load of different places in which these LLMs and AI views are pulling those signals to suggest that they should surface your brand in their answer to the prompts or queries. So we need to start thinking about, rather than the more traditional, let's hyper focus in on Google search, we need to think about how do we proliferate across the channels to make sure that we're mentioning our brand in the right light across social channels, YouTube, etc., and so on to build that picture. So where does AI look for answers? We talked a lot about the fact that blogs are kind of a fundamental to this. Those are the things that haven't necessarily changed for a very long period of time. It's just about how you structure them, write them, the information that you provide in there that tends to be more useful. We know that freshness is a really important aspect of that. So news is something that is really heavily leveraged and relied on. And that's important when it comes to looking at how we ensure that we've got further brand mentions or brand PR wins across the space. And then talking to some of the stuff that Maria mentioned is how is it that we repurpose some of the content that we've got, say, in these blog pieces or on the site across LinkedIn and YouTube? How do we not necessarily reinvent the wheel, but how do we level up our content on those platforms without having to dedicate too much resource? And then the final thing, again, which Maria talked about, is things like Wikipedia, Reddit, Quora. We know that ChatGPT has kind of moved away from referencing those Reddit and Wikipedia quite so much, but equally we know just how important they have been over the last 18 months. We know that they've cropped up in traditional search results a lot more, and that's something that we need to think about in terms of our strategy and how we adopt what we're doing on those platforms. And then to a question from the audience, which is relevant to the previous slide. So the question is, you mentioned Reddit and Medium in past webinars. What about Substack? Does posting on Substack build one's brand credibility like those other platforms? So the short answer is yes. But what I would say is Substack a platform that your audience tends to use? Are they the target market for someone that's utilizing Substack? If yes, and you've got the right level of resource, then Substack is absolutely one of the pieces of the puzzle that you should consider in terms of when you're talking about delivering value to your audience, and it will help to build your brand credibility and brand mentions that feed into all of the things that we've talked about to ultimately improve the likelihood that you're ranking in AI overviews or cited in LLM platforms. And to talk to the repurposing of things, so that's one of the key things that I called out previously. Excuse me. So how do we repurpose that really well-performing site content into LinkedIn threads, short clips, and how do we think about approaching Reddit and Quora with some of the content that we've already got? Is there already like a ready-made answer in some of that content that we've created that we could publish in Reddit or answer in Reddit? But we need to think carefully about what our strategy is when it comes to opening up the channel that is Reddit, and we'll touch on that in a further slide going forward. And then once we've done that repurposing, ultimately the key thing there is to measure what the uptick is. So how many brand mentions are we getting? What is the brand query lift? What are the referral clicks that are coming from these LLMs into our GA4 or other analytics platforms? And how has that changed since we've gone through the process of repurposing and looking at the search everywhere landscape? As this talks to the point I was making about Reddit. We've had quite a few clients come to us and say, look, we know that LLMs are citing Reddit answers. We know that Reddit answers or threads are coming up quite a lot more regularly in search. Can we just go away and sort of scattergun and answer certain questions on Reddit? Well, the answer is no, but we should certainly consider Reddit as part of our overall marketing strategy. But what you want to be doing is adding genuine value. You want to answer questions that aren't necessarily directly related to your product. You want to appear, I suppose, slightly removed from the brand in which you're working on. Share examples, contribute tools, etc. Basically build the picture you're the expert in that space. And what we've also recommended with some of our clients to be completely transparent is that within their tag, within Reddit or their name, they actually reference their brand. But what they're doing is they're building the authority and trust in them first before they go anywhere near talking about, oh, you should consider our brand in this particular question. And so by doing that over a period of time, you build a recognition loop. So the more trusted voices reference you, the more AI surfaces your content, and ultimately Reddit starts to prove to be a very good long-term strategy for your business. And so how do we track those mentions? SEMrush is a very good go-to tool. I'm sure lots and lots of you guys use SEMrush in various different ways. So you can quite easily see AI overviews or summaries that are appearing for your brand. You simply go into, I think it's domain overview, enter your domain, and then you can go into SERP features and then toggle into AI overviews, and you can see how you're building your visibility within that. SparkToro, fantastic tool to look at how your brand is appearing across a wide variety of communities, social channels, and creators. So certainly a tool to think about in the mix if you want to look at your overall kind of brand visibility. And then you could also look at what do you believe are the most vital, important kind of queries that people might be asking as potential customers for your brand, and start, monitoring them across things like Reddit and Quora. But just to kind of take it back to how we win clicks in the landscape that is changing, we know there's 3 things that work really well. Maria's already talked to the fact that video is starting to surface in those AI reviews. There's high level of engagement on videos, likely to mean that people are going to click into and consume that content. And the reason it still matters outside of that is because we know Gemini and Google cite YouTube heavily. How to or FAQ schema, we know that talks to the format in that it presents nice, short and sharp summaries and answers that lend themselves to LLMs and AI overviews. And then also something not to forget is things like, star ratings and reviews. Ultimately, everyone's product lives and dies on reviews, and it's only going to encourage people to click through into your listing if you've got reviews, or even if you've got UGC content on the page. So just to chat to reviews, what we need to do in order to kind of capture that aspect of is look for independent voices that influence AI and users. Think about considering trying to be featured in content around the best tools for X. With some of our clients, we've actually created content where we've introduced them into a best piece of content and featured that on the site, and seen some really good success in ChatGPT in terms of pickup and visibility. The one thing to think about there is that these LLMs are still in their infancy. They haven't necessarily got to a point where they're really doubling down on making sure that the content is of massive amounts of value to the user. They're more just going off of all of the signals that are suggesting that it is. So that's something to consider. But yeah, we've seen some quick wins and success in creating that more best type content, and we know that out there in the industry, a lot of people are talking about that. And then thirdly, how is it that we leverage third-party list industry reports, go out and trying to, compete for awards and so on? Those again only help to, better your visibility or credibility when it comes to reviews and so on. And as we've said a few times throughout, is how do we make sure that we're building trust within that content that we create? So we talked quite a lot about utilizing things like proprietary data or first-party data and weaving that into your content to add to the likelihood that you're bringing new things to the table, interesting stuff that should be cited. Think about publishing your organization details in more detail. We know in ChatGPT, for example, About Us pages tend to be cited quite a lot along with the homepage. So how is it that we build out our about Us page, our leadership page, or the leadership team within that and what their expertise is? And then also things like, highlighting the review process on that content. When was it last reviewed? When was it last who fact checked it? When was it last updated? And so on. So yeah, there's a number of things that you could relatively simply do on the current content that you've got or within your content roadmap to make sure that you're hitting the mark from a author and credentials perspective.
And now let's talk about measurement and how to measure what really matters now. And then we have another question from the audience that says the following: I would like confirmation on what number in GA4 we should be looking at to measure organic traffic, overall sessions, or users. Well, in this case, my opinion is that the better KPI is overall sessions instead of users. While users give you, of course, a visibility on your audience, then the sessions are better rating to kind of see the volume of the visits that you have in SEO. But
and
what is
also
important
for organic traffic, you should also look at visibility, right? So where are you showing up? How are your competitors showing up? What's the sentiment? You can do some of this in the Google Uber Suggest AI visibility report, but those metrics are going to become more and more important for SEO as these platforms start think of as I'm showing like AI mode more frequently and more regularly, kind of like the Chat GPT experience. As they start doing more and more of that, which will happen over time, it'll just bring out the importance of you know your visibility and the sentiment, because what you'll find is less traffic, but you'll find higher conversion rates.
Definitely. And that's why we are kind of changing the way we are thinking about the KPIs. And we have here in the next slide an example of this on how we were more focused on organic sessions where we start here in SEO, and now we are thinking more about the influence that we have. So this is why Neil was explaining these impressions and the influence that we have, also the brand query growth and how our brand is evolving and showing up in different search results. And this is why, and this is a nice example of this, just as Neil has just explained, of the different tools that we can use to see our visibility in this ecosystem today. And we have the example of Uber Suggest, where today you can check in different queries, different prompts are generated later on, and you can see your visibility and as well the visibility of your competitors. So you will see already a good insight on how are you doing in terms of LLMs today. And this is important because the first part, once that you know exactly what are you measuring and why, what are the KPIs that make sense for you and your business, then we have to audit the pages. You have to audit your site to see what are the different visibility gaps that you have, what are the things that are not really picking up in LLMs and why is that so, and then reallocate the effort. And as we said, maybe refresh some pages, change the summaries or the structure of some of the others. And when we are auditing a website, we are going to see not only the visibility gaps that we have, but also the high value pages that we have as well. And in this case, this is as well really important because I think it's really nice that we have a blog page, for example, that shows in AI overviews, but isn't it a bit of a missed opportunity if we are not leading our user to a page that is going to convert? Because ultimately what we all want is to generate more leads. So this is why it's really important to work on the strong CTAs and have this approach of test and learn in these high value pages to lead the users where we want them to go. And this is why I think this is the main conclusion that we have in this part of the presentation, is the test and learn, this agility. As I said, smaller brands are now kind of grabbing the spaces from big brands in AI overviews because they are adapting faster, because they are more agile, because they are testing and learning on different approaches or how are they doing their content strategy. And this is important because if we do it, we can adapt better and faster than our competitors, and then be the voice that then different LLMs are going to showcase and share.
All right, so what does this mean for marketers? Well, when you want to talk about winning back visibility, there's a few things that can really end up helping you. At the end of the day, influence matters just as much as clicks. And if you want to win back visibility, it's not all about, hey, how do I get more traffic to my website? Because the world of SEO has changed to how do you show up? How do you make sure you show up in a positive way, right? Where the sentiment is amazing. And how can you make sure that you're building content that AI prefers? And a lot of that has to do with the structure of the content, like using schema markup, keeping it fresh. Fresh is more important than ever. Original, we're finding that AI generated regurgitated content doesn't perform as well in today's world versus new, fresh content because they lack that type of content. And you want to make sure that you're not just focusing on one channel. Your channel should be ChatGPT, Perplexity, Google, Bing, and all the social media platforms that people are searching on as well. Now you can use AI within your applications, and you can see it on the right side of what people are really using AI for. But what we're finding is AI written content, pure AI written content, isn't performing as well as human written content or human plus AI written content. So pick any of the two latter, and that is what does well. But keep in mind, in today's world, when you're creating content, you want to write for a human, package for AI. That means you need to create content where a human can read and be like, wow, this is valuable. I know what to take away from this. And at the same time, AI ends up breaking down, oh, cool. We understand really quickly what this content's about and how to send it to users and showcase to it so it's valuable for them. And if you want to help you, or if you want us to help you reclaim your traffic and you want to work with us, again, you can scan that QR code and it'll take you over to npdigital.com. Fill out your information. We help companies all over the world. We have, I think we're in 20 something countries at this point. And yeah, we'd love to help you out and get you more traffic if you want us to just do it for you. All right, Colin, let's get into some Q&A.
Man, that was awesome. And I don't know, we do these every 2 weeks. This one may top the charts for numbers of questions, or right up there with webinar with total questions, because it's such a hot topic. So where to begin? Let's start with Charlie. I don't know the answer to this question. I kind of think I do, but I'm gonna ask it, and hopefully you can answer it. Is there any way to analyze what exactly people are asking AI, or where specifically we are showing up? Google Analytics just says like OpenAI or Perplexity sort of as a referral. Is there the equivalent to like, the Google Keyword Planner tool where we know whatever the prompt was searched however many times? Like, do we have that information yet, or what?
No, we don't 100% know what they're searching, because what everyone puts in is so unique. Whereas maybe first, like Google Search Console or whatever, it's slightly more generic, and also Google's giving you access to see that. But there are tools out there that will allow you to kind of understand the types of prompts that people might be using to try and look for businesses like yours. Things like the Ubersuggest AI tool, I'm pretty sure you can utilize the functionality in that to look at the types of prompts that might be relevant to your business and to see whether or not you're visible for those prompts. There's another tool called Profound, which you may well have heard of, which again is a similar tool. Essentially, it allows you to plug in a whole load of prompts that either suggest knowing your industry, or that you can create that you think are relevant to your brand or business that you want to be found for. And then it will essentially go away and, I guess, simulate being an individual user and put that type of prompt into the platform to see what comes up. And it does that consistently over time. And then you can track your visibility, but you're not necessarily getting real world data. It's more of a proxy for the visibility that you might have in those platforms. So I think at the moment, that's the best that you can expect. Maybe in the future, if someone solves the issue we've got around trying to figure out how to unravel the black box, so to speak. But for the moment, most people in the industry are using those tools that, I guess, simulate prompts, and then understanding who's visible, why they're visible, and what you need to do to your page or content to become visible.
Awesome. So Neil, we had a great session last week with the founder of Profound. One of the questions that the audience came up with is, what's the best way to track your AI visibility at the moment? Can you maybe just talk about, in your opinion, what are the differences between a platform like Profound and maybe Ubersuggest? Like, what's one used for versus the other?
So Profound's great if you're an enterprise company with 100 different locations or 50 different locations throughout the world. And you have bigger budgets. Bigger budgets meaning, I think their product starts at $6,000 a year and it goes up from there, so it can get into the 20s, 30s, 50s, even over 100,000 a year. With Ubersuggest AI Visibility Report, you can do a lot of this for free. Yes, to use more features, it starts costing money. But when I say costing money, it's like $30 a month, so it's pretty affordable, and you can get quite a bit of what you can get in the other tools just at a fraction of the cost. We are working on more features that will launch within I would say 30 days at the latest. And you'll start seeing them within Uber suggest. So for example, your keyword overview report where people do keyword research will start showing up. We're showcasing prompts and what prompts people are typing in to find you or your competitors and the general industry. Just when you're doing keyword research, that launches within a month or so. And we're also making those adjustments within Answer the Public as well. Funny enough, I was beta testing it. We've been in beta for the new version where it pulls in LLM data for maybe 2 weeks now. But the team fixed a lot of bugs last night, so I was testing it before this call, and that should roll out, my guess is, within a few weeks.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So Charlie, back to you. I don't know if you saw this one, but it's a good one. I'm going to try to answer it because I have some experience on our own website for this, but can a good JSON script in GTM really help summarize what's going on and get you more visibility in AI overviews? So we use JSON LD scripts all the time for FAQs and how-tos and all that jazz. Any tips or tricks or thoughts, Charlie, on that? Because there were a couple people asking about JSON to try to help get more inclusions.
Definitely when it comes to visibility in AI overviews, for sure. I would say less is more. Always think about the page type and the purpose of the page. So we've had a lot of clients who, have heard that schema is important or JSON's important when it comes to making it easier for, I guess, bots to digest the information, and then therefore more likely to, parse it, crawl it, index it, and so on, and therefore surface it in these AI overviews. But what I would say is that, if you're adding too much of that, that's going to add weight to the page. It's going to reduce page speed, load times, and so on. So yeah, I would say definitely think about the purpose of the page. If it's maybe more of a educational piece and there's FAQs that are relevant to that, then feed FAQs into it and use JSON within that. And that will help, I suppose, towards visibility in AI overviews. But what we found with things like ChatGPT is that ChatGPT doesn't actually necessarily utilize JavaScript. So it's only using the HTML on the page to pull what it needs from that page. So they're certainly integral to Google search and AI, less so when it comes to ChatGPT and other LLMs.
Yeah, and whatever you're putting in the JSON script, the content should match the content on the page. This isn't like back in the old day where you keyword stuff a bunch of crap into a no script tag. That used to work like a charm way back when, but that's not something that you want to do now. So Maria, while we are talking FAQs, we had a question from a viewer. Is an FAQ page on a website more important now than with AI overviews? I mean, FAQs have been a thing for a while, but it kind of seems like it's talked about a lot now with AI overviews and ChatGPT and all the LLMs. Any thoughts there?
It is indeed, but also because it's also how we are evolving, right? In searching.
I think you're on mute.
Oh, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah.
I got you.
Okay, cool, perfect. So yeah, I was just saying that this is how search is evolving and how we are asking questions right now. So all of the queries that we do right now, like not all of them, but we are switching to this conversational kind of era and queries. So this is why FAQs make more sense right now, that we are searching way more and we are searching more questions than ever before. But it also depends on the intent of the different queries that you ask. So not everything has to be answered with an FAQ. So we have to have a different strategy depending on the intent of that query. But yeah, FAQs for sure are more important now than ever before.
So while we have you, there was a question on intent. What the heck is it? Can you just explain, because we talk about intent quite a bit, what does that mean? Explain to the viewers what intent is and why we kind of look at that to try to figure out what to go after and what to write.
Yeah, just think about intent as the different answers of the different questions that you ask. When you, for example, you as a business owner today, you can be the best in ranking for a type of query, and you may think, okay, this is definitely something that I can cover with an article. But then when you look for that query, all of the different answers that you see on Google are product pages. So there is a mismatch there, right? You are not really answering what the users are asking because Google doesn't show up that. And this is what intent looks like. You really have to go and test and see what are the different search results for what are you actually asking.
Yeah, and while we have you, I got lots of questions for you, Maria. Can you explain a little bit more about the difference between a pillar, a content pillar page or a concept, and then content clusters? Like, what's the difference? How does one sort of support the other? We had a couple of questions about that.
Yeah, sure. It depends, of course, on the example we want to add here. I was talking about cities and neighborhoods at the beginning, but we can also take it to the realm of SEO. So, content pillar, a pillar on a page would be the SEO, the ultimate guide to SEO, for example, where you have everything there and you have all of the topics. And then the content clusters will be the different subtopics, so everything related to technical SEO or content or link building. So the different subtopics that will help you out create that guide later on, and how they connect to each other, they're also really important, and that's what we call internal linking.
Yeah, I mean, it's similar to the hierarchy of a website where you've got like the main category and then the subcategories sort of underneath it. That's sort of how I've always thought about it. What else do we have here? This was a tough one, Charlie. Sorry to throw you a curveball. I don't know the answer to this one. Does Substack not take quality content from a brand's own website blog? Would you recommend keeping that content on the website or using Substack, or perhaps a combination of the two? Trick question.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for that, Colin. What I would default to there is that Substack and your website are two quite different places, and so the behavior that people might exhibit on a Substack or your website is quite different, and they should potentially talk to two quite different parts of the journey. So you could certainly reuse the content, but I would say you'd want to repurpose. You don't want to duplicate that content. You want to provide new value within that Substack. So I would say you don't have to, as I said before, reinvent the wheel, but I would say just think about the fact that people might be using them in different ways and expecting slightly different content. So repurpose the content you've got on site, but do so with that in mind.
Awesome. So Neil, a couple more for you, and these were actually questions asked last week in a webinar. And you had a great answer, so I'm asking you. On average, how quickly does an AI search detect new content compared to traditional search? I'm sure it varies across sites, but is there an average?
Platforms.
Yeah, and like, is Google quicker than Perplexity and ChatGPT? Like, you had a great response to this question last week, and I'm sure everyone would love to hear what you have to say.
So we are finding that if you make an update to your website and your existing site with authority, we're finding sometimes you can get traction within 24 to 48 hours. Right? With traditional SEO, a lot of this stuff, like people tell you, like, takes years. Even with traditional SEO, you can see results within 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. It may not be the results you want to see, but it compounds over time. With these LLMs, you can see some quick results and quick wins, just like you can see some quick wins in SEO from changes you're making, but it compounds over time. So don't expect miracles in a day or two. Now, we do have some case studies on the NP Digital website where we literally took clients that already had some authority, not a ton, but some authority, were ranking on page 1. We then ended up looking at the queries and prompts people were using to find their site, or at least those pages. And we took those prompts, answered them directly in a summary. You can use FAQs, or you can just do key points and put bullets at the tops. And what we found is typically in 24 to 48 hours, we were able to get them included in the AI overviews. So you can gain some quick wins. But if you really look at the results from that client that I'm talking about, they started doing extremely well 6 to 12 months, and the wins started compounding one after another over time. So again, I know this is a long answer. With a lot of these platforms, you can see some quick wins, but the results really do compound over time. Just don't take shortcuts. And here's what I mean by shortcuts. I started seeing some people being like, oh, if you want to rank really well on ChatGPT, just write your own blog articles like the top 10 best, because they're taking a lot of list-based articles, and then you'll end up showing up. Well, just like Google's algorithm, ChatGPT has evolved over time. Remember when they're showcasing Reddit a lot? They showcase them less now. Reddit's stock tanked because of that. I don't know where it is today, but that's what happened to Reddit's stock because of it. ChatGPT continually adjusts algorithm. And just like Google, they'll be like, huh, if Joe the Plumber's talking about the best marketing agencies and NP Digital's ranking for all of them because junk sites are, eventually they'll filter that out, and these tactics are very short-sighted. And I wouldn't recommend putting a lot of time and money, if any, on these kind of tactics. And I believe you should focus on more long-term approaches, because that's where the ROI is going to be. And those are the results that compound. But when you do all this short-sighted stuff, you'll get some results. And then a year or two later, as the algorithms update and evolve, you're like, wow, all that time and money we spent is doing no good in today's world. So, oh, if we took the long-term approach, all the money we spent and time we spent would have compounded and still helped us today. And we went through this with SEO. You're going to go through the same thing with these LLM platforms, so take the long-term approach. I know the second part of my answer, it wasn't part of the question, but I want to put them together, because when people want to know how quickly they're going to get results, they're like, oh, let me just do a lot of short-sighted stuff to just get quicker results.
So we've got like 2 more minutes, and I don't know if you've got a response to this one or not, Neil, but this one was asked, and I think it's an interesting one. How do you think all of this might evolve when you have OpenAI and Perplexity and others launching with their own browsers? Like, what is that? I mean, do we know what? I mean, we know that Chrome probably has a heavy influence on AI
Chrome is
overviews.
integrating AI features within their browser. More people are going to create more browsers. As an end consumer, marketer, searcher, don't worry about any of this.
Yeah.
Just like, do you really worry if there's going to be a new TikTok killer out there? No. But what's happened with social media? You still have TikTok, you still have Facebook, you still have Instagram. According to Sprout Social, the average person logs into more than 6 social networks per month. The same thing's going to happen with SEO. Google is not going to crush OpenAI. OpenAI is not going to crush Google. And there's still there's still room for Anthropic and all the other platforms out there. And just like the social web, you're going to have different platforms that do different things and are better for one thing over another. And people are going to use multiples of them versus just one of them.
Sounds like a mic drop moment to end the webinar. Thanks for attending, everyone. Thank you, Charlie, Maria,
Thank
Neil.
you for taking.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye.